Good. Okay, so first and foremost, thank you everyone for your time. It's really appreciated. Busy day, Friday, weather looks nice outside. So I think, being able to come to this is it's really appreciated that people want to be part of this and contribute. Just in terms of housekeeping, if people have questions, we've got a chat box on the side. So if you just want to ask away as the conversation is evolving, and then we can kind of pick those questions up and make sure that anything that anyone has isn't missed. Okay, so just a heads up as well. Am I right in saying, Joe, that we're recording this session? We are indeed. You're going to get the thumbs up from Joe, so that's good. So first and foremost, I want to thank our panelists. So we've got Linzi Monks, Head of Apprenticeships and Employment Engagement at Preston College. We've got Sean Hill, Head of Commercial Operations at Blue Wren. Shira from Preston City Council isn't able to join us because basically just gone into tier 3, so she's probably trying to put some fires out. And we've got Kat, owner and director of Society Management as well. So thank you guys for your time, really appreciate it. Yeah, and also so don't forget the sponsors as well. So I just want to thank the people that supported Digital Lancs over the years, and the kind of financially as well as service-wise. So we've got Lancashire County Council, More and Smalley, and the Digital Skills Partnerships, and Hiscox. I've not missed anyone, have I, Joe? No? Okay. Cool. So yeah, I mean, I guess the goal of today is, I kind of was talking before with the guys, is just really to kind of get round and have a discussion as a cluster, and also is most of the people here are involved or work in the city centre, and a big part of that is, I think, is coming together and just having conversations and talking about effectively how business has been, how things have been over the past 6-8 months, and how things are looking moving forward. Obviously, there's probably a lot of things that people have experienced that are both good and bad. So from a Digital Lancashire perspective, the goal would be to try and understand that and learn more about that, and as an entity, how we can shape supporting some of that stuff, and arguably connecting the dots, so people that are kind of involved as members and feel that they can add value to some of the things that we're looking to achieve, then by all means, get in touch and become part of that kind of that conversation, really. Cool. So I guess probably the first question that we've got down to kind of talk to kind of some of the panelists is kind of I guess what the impact has been over the past 6 months for some of these people in Preston, and particularly, yeah, as a business, how have things affected you? So I guess if anyone wants to kind of air their thoughts, then by all means, air away.
I mean, there was a lot of early adapting, wasn't there? So jumping straight into remote work in a full remote operation had its challenges, but I think from Blue Wren's perspective, we were set up to do that already anyway. So we've found that we adapted very, very quickly, and in terms of our sort of productivity and things, we haven't seen an impact in that sense. We've found that a lot of our customers needed some extra support, I would say, as well, as they were transitioning to working from home, how they need to access things, how they could sort of manage the processes that they were doing before finding the office, how they could do that sort of in a remote environment. That was a big challenge for people to try and overcome. And that was across a plethora of types of businesses. So I think from internally as Blue Wren, we adapted well, adapted quickly as everyone had to. But yeah, it was more about being on hand to support the customers. That was the important thing for us, make sure we're able to still serve them.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the college's perspective as well, obviously we had about 2 days to move an entire college from face-to-face delivery to remote delivery, which has its challenges in itself, but challenges for our infrastructure in order to be able to make sure that we could have all the systems in place and all the learners would be able to access the remote learning. And I think one of the things that flagged up to that is that there is an awful lot of young people in the Preston area that don't have the access to digital and don't have the basic digital skills necessary to actually perform on remote learning at this moment in time. So for one of our biggest challenges is obviously that very quick upskill to those basic skills for them to be able to still access the learning, but also tapping into what funds and things are available to help us to support them to get access to the equipment they need to be able to move their world to online in a very quick amount of time. So there's been some big challenges, but it's flashed up that there is maybe some gaps in that education as well for young people, as well as the ability to access equipment and technology in the first place.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you, I guess, just to follow that up, then, like, moving forward, does that shape how education looks next year and the year after, based on the experience you've had this year?
Absolutely. I mean, we'd already started to look at it in small scale, but if we're entirely honest, digital prior to this sat within digital sector, and so it was, but now digital is everywhere and it's across all of the sectors. So in terms of education, actually, we've talked about basic skills for people in education for a long time, but digital is now one of those basic skills. But it's not compulsory or mandatory by the government for qualifications to be done in digital, but it is a basic skill for people to get into employment. So in terms of us having a mission to make our learners the most employable, then digital skills has got to be a real front runner in our education systems moving forward.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. To sort of answer your question around sort of how things affected us at site, one, it was quite interesting really for us when everything happened, because we weren't actually mandated to be closed as a business. You know, we could still offer the facilities for everybody to work, but it naturally sort of took a course where people stopped coming because, you know, the work from home orders, and everybody that's here, well, most people that are here can work from home in some way. So sort of naturally it sort of ebbed off. And as a company, we actually took a decision that we thought we should close, really, because it wouldn't be right for us to be giving a message and advocating a message to say, come to here to work, you know, and actively encourage people to come out of the house here to work. It didn't really sit right. It didn't, you know, feel like the right thing to be doing. So sort of as we spoke to all of our members who work here permanently and day to day, and we all kind of collectively decided that, you know, that we would shut the doors. Which was awful.
It must have been a tough decision.
Really hard, really hard. You know, we're 3 years old, and this year we finally felt like we'd got to some degree of where we wanted to be. You know, the place was buzzing. It had such an amazing feel about it, and to shut the doors again felt really hard. But Mish has just dropped a message in the side. I was going to say that following that, we just really focused everything onto the community, because we've got such a great group of people that everything that we did post our sort of lockdown and closure, we just worked really hard to keep everybody connected. And it was actually, when I think about it now, it's quite magical what happened, that all of our sorts of like bits of things that we had in place, like our Slack channel and support structures and stuff, just went crazy. It was really quite electric in the first sort of few weeks, and people who are normally really quiet as well on those channels, it really came alive with everybody sort of supporting each other. You know, like got accountants in the building who were like straight out saying, if anybody wants any help, advice, support, you know, we're here, just give us a shout. We started little like initiatives, like a Slack chat initiative, where we had somebody took the reins for a couple of hours on the channel and just opened their door and said, you know, if you've got any questions about, you know, how to navigate social media right now, let's talk about it. And it was amazing. It was really cool to see how the community really came together and supported each other.
Yeah, because you spent a long time building a culture, and like you sound, by the sounds of it, that you've adapted that culture to an online space. But there's probably a lot of positives that come out of that. I guess for you moving forward, then, how do you see things, does that change how you look at Society One, like in the near future or the far future?
It's interesting. I still believe that, you know, the fundamentals of a place for people to come and work and be together has a huge benefit to everybody. And I think it's valid and it's needed. Right now it's hard. I mean, we have people in working every day. There's, you know, I have done since we opened. There's a core sort of group that are in all the time, and everybody says the same thing. It's like their little kind of like lifeline to the outside world and reality, because you kind of fulfill a little bit of a social sort of need that you have at the moment. You can't do, but weirdly you get to do it through work a little bit. So I think that ultimately for me the physical side of things are like the ultimate importance in what we do. But it kind of doesn't change our sort of philosophy on things in some ways. It just heightens up what we're focused on, which is community and people and connections and support, and it's just cemented everything that we've all the values that we've laid out and really kind of tried to hold really close to everything that we do. It's just galvanized everything for us, and we're just like, yeah, it's really meaningful, and it's going to be needed even more coming up than ever before, you know, when everybody is allowed to be out to get out again.
Yeah,
I think we're just going to be dying to have human contact again.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing certainly for us as a company is kind of probably like similar to Sean at Blue End, like the kind of as a technology company, you're probably geared up towards like managing this transition quite well. I think the bit that you touched upon, like the culture and the soft skills that you kind of lose from a face-to-face environment, probably the bit that kind of I find hardest to kind of rationalize how to get around, because people, we're all human beings, and like we need to be around each other and be social creatures. And I think certainly for myself working remotely, the kind of you can feel that diminish a little bit without that kind of contact around people. And I think that's probably for us, like in terms of challenges, that's the biggest challenge as an agency, is how do you kind of maintain culture. But by the sounds of what you've been doing, like, you know, the kind of support and the tooling that's in place, like, you know, the Slack channels, and being proactive in pulling everyone together, that's worked really well for you guys.
How's it work for the rest of you, you know, in the sense that you know, that's what we kind of were already geared to do, you know, but as a company with employees that have gone home to work, have you guys found it kind of gone or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were all in complete lockdown and went to remote working right at the beginning. And I absolutely agree. I mean, the culture of doing everything via Zoom and Teams and all the different things, you're still getting that face-to-face in one way, but you're not being able to feed off people in the same way that you used to do before. And it does lead to people feeling very isolated, very vulnerable, and maybe, you know, in terms of some of the new skill sets that people had to learn in order for them to do that, and for our teachers in particular, the whole pedagogy around teaching changed in terms of how they've been learnt to how they become teachers, that you can start to doubt yourself and something that you've always felt that you're very good at, and you know, you've always had a lot of confidence in what you do, that can get knocked whilst you're doing this transition. And I think over time, you know, people have started to build that back up again when they've realised that things they've been trying have worked, but there's still a lot of anxiousness around that at home and that remote working for some. I mean, I suppose we're lucky in one way. We've gone back to a 50-50 rota system for back in the offices and stuff, and the college is working on a 50% face-to-face at this moment in time, so we're getting a bit of a both worlds, but we could be going back to full remote sooner than we think. So it's always at the back of people's mind, and it does make people anxious, and like I say, start to doubt themselves a little bit on the skill set that they've always felt confident in.
If I can just come in on there, sorry, just thinking from the we at 3-Man Factory. I'm going to put my 3-Man Factory hat on for this one. Incidentally, I'm the poor replacement for Shira from Preston Council who couldn't make it. So I can't.
Sorry, do you know what? I didn't introduce you. Like you're just so part of the furniture, and so
exactly. It's like,
really sorry.
He's still there. It's the same old hair, same old beard. But with my 3-Man Factory hat on, the hearing what people have said, actually, it's always good to hear that people are going through similar experiences, whether that's positive or negative or all of those things in between. So just to briefly touch on that initial question you asked, Adam, around the last 6 months. So at 3-Man, we felt in the early stages of lockdown that we were really well prepared in a sense of the tools we used were already being used. We had equipment, laptop that we each had from work that we could take home. I think the challenge was in how you then used those things, because we'd been using them forever. We had to suddenly use them very, very differently. So the focus was a large focus on care and well-being of ourselves and our clients. And just in terms of business impact, yeah, we lost a handful of clients, some who work in the hospitality industry. We did some work with Blackpool Winter Garden, for example. You can imagine that's one of the really hardest hit sectors. And if so, I would echo, we were really busy. We were really lucky in a sense of the work that we did. We do a lot of comms at 3-Man Factory and a lot of crisis comms. So actually, suddenly a lot of the people we work with had something to say, really important things to say, really urgently to lots of people. So we were instrumental in that process. We became almost invaluable, or more valuable rather, to our clients and to the people we work with. So fast forward, just as we start to ease back into the workplace, and we're in a shared facility. We're in the Old Docks House, which is one of the workspace properties. And fair to say there was a degree of anxiety before going back into the workplace, because I completely trust my colleagues and who I work with. I could trust most of the people in the building, but sometimes you just think, hang on a minute. So you're not quite sure. So some of the things that are out of our control made that anxiety of going back into a place that you didn't have full control over a more difficult decision. And I'll finish my little sort of ramble by saying more recently, the focus on wellbeing, we had it was just last week, actually, we had a review on the tools we use to communicate to each other, because we are still very much in a hybrid space. We are happy. I work mostly from home. I like to go in if we're doing like a around the table sort of brainstorming session. But we talked about the things like managing notifications more effectively, because sometimes you have an idea, you ping a message out on Slack, it's 9:20, and some of the employees think, shit, I need to reply to this because and it's just at that time I've just had the space to think about something, I've pinged it. So we had a discussion around being more responsible about when we post or how to do that, manage expectations. We had a discussion around notifications, that actually it's fine on Slack to set sleep. If after 5:30 you don't want to do anything, it's fine to down tools. In fact, it's better to do that. So we had this real fairly lengthy discussion. It felt really positive by the end of it, even though a lot of the things I was following myself, that there was a unified understanding in the team that actually it's okay to do this, and making sure that people's notifications, because we use a lot of tools, so whether that is notifications for the project management, or whether it's Slack, or whether it was emails, all of the things, we had a discussion around when should it be all right to just, you know what, I don't feel like I should get back to you at 20 past whatever it was.
It's interesting that, like you say, like a lot of those tools, they come with an attention cost, because it's almost like interrupting you to, like in the same way you have your mobile phone and you get a message on one of a native app or something similar. The attention cost is immediately to go to it. It kind of pulls you out of the moment or the space that you're in. And I guess, like you say, a part of that, more so with remote working, is how does that communication style of face-to-face adapt to like a digital environment, so that you're not, I guess, I'm not saying that it would distract attention, but there's definitely an attention cost from communicating with someone through digital means, the ping, the alert, the screen grab, the pop-up, all kind of like pulling you away into not say rabbit hole, but into a different attention channel than what you were in. I think that's something, certainly I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that, really.
I think we've not rushed back to the office. The fact that I'm in the office 2 days a week and someone else is in 1 day a week, and our stance is the office is there if you want to use it, but you work from home if that's what you're comfortable doing. You know, a lot of people rely on public transport, and I don't think it'd be fair for us to expect people to come into the office and travel in at this stage. So, and obviously with the moving up to tier 3, who knows what you're actually allowed to do anyway. But I don't think our stance is going to change massively from that. We'll always have a base in the city centre, but I think actually using that as a collaborative space to make sure we're nurturing the culture and we're getting people together and we're collaborating when we need to, but maintaining that balance so that people, if they prefer to work at home, they can do. You know, I think it's important that I think it's accelerated perhaps a move towards a more accepting working from home culture. Anyway,
yeah,
and I think
sorry, you go ahead.
Sorry, go on, Katrina.
No, I find it really interesting, these conversations, because it's, you know, the things that we've been looking at and talking about for some time. You know, it's this whole premises of everything that we do here, and you know, in big industries, it's been moving along in the background for a long time, and it's amazing how this has just sort of rocketed it all up into a, you know, high on everyone's agenda of how to work. And I'm really interested to see how we all go in, you know, fast forward sort of in 12 months time, you know, how we all feel about it and so on. But I find it interesting that, you know, it comes down to, you know, like a lot of people saying that, you know, productivity is up in businesses, you know, and people are happy in working from home by now. But it is interesting, those sort of little social aspects that come from it. And it's like, I've thought about it after a couple of the Zoom sessions this week, actually, when there's so many people in the room now, you know, listening to us talk, that you sort of, when it finishes and we all click off, we sort of all miss out on that, you know, that little mingling around at the end of the session, and the highs and actually the ability to talk to somebody one-to-one, you know, and not in front of an audience. It's kind of gone, and, you know, and you kind of get the ability to have this platform here to do this, which is great, and probably reach people, and we all kind of log in to things that we wouldn't have normally been able to. But it's funny how it kind of, each one comes at a little cost, you know. It's interesting how it takes shape.
I think that's so important. I think, Adam, you mentioned it before we went live, shall we say, about the need to collaborate more as a cluster. It's the same within the organisations as well, you know, and that becomes more of a challenge when you're working remotely. For that very reason, you know, you can't pop next door to someone else's office and ask them or bounce an idea off them quite as freely. Yes, you can ping on a message on Slack or on Teams, but it's noise. It's not so much engagement at that time. And I think that's something that's really interesting in terms of moving to home work, is how you get that engagement on things like that essentially further along. But
I think we've talked a lot about some of the challenges, but I mean, education as a whole is renowned for not moving as quick as industry. We are a little bit slow to react in the education sector to some things. But actually, it's forced us to really look at who our market audience is and what our service is and how we supply that service to them. And things that we've been talking around the edges about and going to put into place for a long time, but never actually got there because we all kept putting the barriers up, have just had to happen. So in the last 6 months, we moved all of our enrolment. So we get over, you know, 1,000 people coming through our doors on 2 days through August, to go round a room and log on to everything and get enrolled to absolutely everything that they need to do face to face. And we moved the whole of that process online. So nobody had to touch the college. It was done in virtual queues and one thing or another. And that happened in a very short period of time and was very successful. And I think from that, we actually had more of an audience, because being able to do things more remotely makes it a lot more accessible for people who can't travel as well. And it opens up doors to people who live further away. So I think there's been some real positives. We've now just moved our advice events for the upcoming year. The first 2 have just happened completely virtually. And they've been really, really successful and really well attended. So there's been some real positive moves forward that have happened a lot quicker than they would have happened. And culturally, we won't shift back from some of those now because they've proven to be much more effective. So I think there's been some real positives digitally out of how things have moved forward in the last 6 months too.
I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because there's a lot of people that loved classroom learning, loved a blended approach, or loved distance learning. And people, as everyone knows, people learn in very different ways and prefer different environments. And I think perhaps being forced to look at how you deliver it digitally has perhaps made it, you've looked at how you can give that a better experience, perhaps, so that it's more similar to what you usually do in a classroom environment. Maybe, I don't know, but it might be.
Yeah, and there's been some challenges in what's delivered, and I think that's some of the stuff as well. I mean, a lot of the people who come to our college are coming for practical courses, so to deliver practical sessions remotely is very difficult and keep them sexy, so people want to keep coming and get engaged to them. So we as a college and our teachers and we've had to really move forward in our digital skills as well, and start using 3D scanners and things like iMotion, and set our services up so they can be much more interactive, and learners can do a lot more and still have that real practical one-on-one experience, but across a computer screen, and so our own skills have been being developed, but by us using those things within our classrooms, that's developing the skills of our learners in those as well. So yeah, there's been some real positives.
Interesting. I think I guess as a cluster in Preston, like how and what people are saying here, it feels like maybe that things will be permanent, like in terms of the improvements that have been realised through forcing going through this situation. And I'm just wondering, like, how does people see the future? Is work from home a permanent thing for a lot of Sean, you guys? Or do you think you'll always have an element of work from home? And I guess extending from that, then how does the city centre look? Because I guess if everyone's working from home, then there's a lot of office space, retail space in the city centre that would be redundant. Like, maybe that's kind of something that,
I think we'll always have a home in Preston, hopefully, and we'll always keep an office in Preston. I think that's important for us to have that space where we can be together as a team. But I think it's about having that flexible approach, really, so that we can respond. I think before COVID, we brought in a sort of flexible working hours anyway, so that people could, as long as they were covering their hours, it didn't matter where they were or when they were logging on and logging off. So there were some key events, key meetings that people need to be a part of, like our sprint plans for development and things like that. But really, we've always had quite a flexible approach of, you don't have to be in 9 to 5. And I don't think that negates the need for an office. Like, moving to a full remote workforce, I don't think that's what we want. We want to continue to nurture that culture to keep people as part of the business, and I think that's important to maintain.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, isn't it? It's kind of like what you're sacrificing in terms of culture by not having a room of human beings, really. I guess from conversations like internally, us at SOAP as a company, I mean, like, one of the biggest things that kind of, when all this happened, was around fundamentally, like, the mental health of everyone and what they were going through. Like, it's hugely traumatic, like the kind of baited headlines and news and the saturation of emotion and sentiment through different social channels and such, like, was putting, like, you can imagine, like, that's quite stressful for some people. Like, other people maybe not. They can filter out that noise. So key thing for us when we moved to kind of work from home was kind of doing, like, regular anonymous kind of sentiment feedback. So every Friday we kind of have feedback from the guys, how we support them, how their mental health is, regular calls, that sort of stuff. And actually, kind of from that, it might be a case of that when in future that we probably won't go back to being in a bricks and mortar building full time, and maybe like a kind of what that looked like. Maybe it's kind of more like serviced office space, you know, if people want that, like, you know, kind of what that's doing at Society One, and maybe that could be a future for a lot of companies. I know a lot of my friends that work for companies in the area, all the way up from BAE downwards, they're looking to kind of scale back office space. So I guess as a digital cluster, this is where we're kind of coming together, probably, and contributing together. It kind of works in that favour, you know, and us shaping that and what that looks like as an entity in the future, because every company will have their different approach to how they kind of see their future 6, 12, 18, 24 months in the future, like whether they downsize, do they need 6,000 square foot in the centre of Preston or not, because realistically our office, we've got 3-story printworks in town, we're not going to need all that space probably, because, you know, just for a lifestyle choice, it kind of works better for people to work from home in some situations.
You know, the office is always very cold at the moment when I go in, because, you know, no one else makes the brews. There's all those sorts of challenges with it. No, it's you're so right, and I do think it's. I'm reluctant to say, like, to make any decisions now. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to rush into anything.
Yeah,
that's it. I totally agree with that. I think it's a real transitionary phase right now. It's very easy for people to sort of think that, you know, you could give it all up, and do we really need it? But I think there's a real period of taking stock coming for a lot of people, I think, right now. And I think, like you touched on the idea, I think there'll be a myriad of different scenarios. Massive companies reducing down to workspace where people work just a couple of days a week. How they manage that, I don't know. There'll be small companies who give up their offices completely and maybe use spaces like we have here. We've had that, a couple of new members start that have given up their office of 2 and 3 people because they just don't need it anymore, and they come here for their meetings or team days and that type of thing. So, you know, that's a hope for us, that's something that will obviously benefit us. But I think the spectrum's going to be huge, and I think it's going to take quite a while for people to really figure out what is right for them, because some businesses will want to still have their office and their presence, and I think for many it's really important. It's a place where their clients come. It's something that people identify with, and it's a place, you know, it's all the innate human needs of wanting to belong to something and be part of something, and, you know, feel safe there and be part of a community is as important in any business as any sort of wider community work that anybody's doing. And I think, kind of strangely, there's something about that bricks and mortar in a place with an identity just naturally brings that, and I don't know how it would be if all of that disappears for companies. You know, what does that really mean? It's all, you know, it's a massive leap of faith to go into a virtual world without an identity. For companies that have a certain scale to them and staffing to them, you know, I think it's fine.
If I can just come in on that one, because I think the discussions around because we, in fact, building on from the hybrid workplace session we had, which feels like a long time, I think it might have been yesterday, recently. So a lot of these things came into play, but I just wanted to, I suppose, put in some of the barriers to the things that we've experienced at 3Man. So I think in terms of what this working from home and the hybrid workspace thing has presented, for a lot of people, the commute or the absence of a commute has been an absolute godsend. And I think certainly for businesses in Preston, because if you try to get in or out of Preston at the minute, even if you understand how the one-way system works, it is tough. It is really very difficult. I have to try to map, like, where am I going in town and which way in, because I live in the South Ribble. So there's a certain way, I've got really planned my route, which sounds ridiculous, but you get caught in the wrong system. So I think one of the issues about Preston, personally, I think is traffic and traffic management. If I try and leave the office at a certain time, it's going to take me 45 minutes. I only live a few miles from home. Whereas if I get it on the right time, it's 7 or 8 minutes. So there's that to consider in terms of the commute, I think, has impact. I'm sure you feel the pinch of the lack of parking in Preston, or rather the lack of affordable parking, perhaps. that would support spaces like Society One.
Yeah, but that's cities everywhere. I think, you know, parking actually is kind of a bit of a new discussion for me, because I think if you want to be in a city, if you can have a parking discussion about every town centre and every city around, you know, I'm afraid it's kind of how it is to pay for parking in cities, isn't it?
I think at the heart of it, I'm a cheapskate, cat, is what it comes down to. But I suppose the only other reflection I want to put in on this, the idea of the workplace and those things. Funnily enough, and it was the talk about either downscaling offices, or perhaps there was a really interesting concept. Someone phrased the future of the workspace of perhaps co-working spaces being like hotels for businesses, where you rent it for a set amount of time. And I get that. That's a neat idea. But weirdly, at Three Man, we've gone the other way. We've just same building, bigger room, bigger premises. Because we found that what we had wasn't big enough to socially distance. We've actually got a bigger space so that we weren't crammed into what we had. And I don't know if that's an anomaly, but I thought it was in light of these, I think, valid perceptions of where we see the workspace and what the workplace looks like. We've kind of gone this strange other way about it. But yeah, for me, the traffic stuff, which isn't potentially a digital problem, but it impacts businesses in the area, like traffic, I think is an important one.
I suppose one of the things
from the city centre, the idea of, you know, how do we keep a city centre going? But I think, you know, we've talked about this many times before, Adam, and you know, we talked about it with Andy from Wash and itself, Blue Wren, that it's been really interesting how we as companies have sort of chosen this area to come into and sort of made a sort of a stake into the city centre. And, you know, we've always sort of made this sort of joke of like, you know, renegade in the cities, like, let's, you know, kind of fly the flag. And it's been really, for us, it's been really warming to know that there's other companies that have made that, you know, stake of like, you know, we want this to be our home and believe in city centre. And maybe that's sometimes what it takes as well, people to take that leap of faith, to want to belong somewhere. You know, why? I mean, it's like, why did you guys choose to come into Preston?
Us, or we just saw like a nice building and it looked great, so we bought it. Walking past it.
Nice building, I'll give you that.
Yeah, so, I think probably because like it's different now, because like I guess when all this stuff happened with COVID, I was just going off on a tangent. I'm going off on a tangent. Is it relevant? What do you think? Yeah, kind of. All right. So yeah, I mean, we picked Preston fundamentally because we were based there. We had offices in like serviced office space in Manchester as well, because the catchment area of skills, like predominantly. But yeah, Preston's kind of like where we were born. Like we're kind of reasonably, a lot of our staff are from around here. You know, traveling up from Lancaster, Liverpool, some from Manchester, but fundamentally most of the staff are within, you know, a 50-minute commute to the office. So that was one of the main reasons. Also, you kind of like the connectivity through the train station, you know, to London, Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester, and Edinburgh is quite good. But all that stuff's kind of moot now. Like I think people are so dialed into working remotely that and like doing video conferencing that the idea of kind of communicating, pitching, onboarding, all those kind of things that in an agency life cycle occurs, that people are kind of acceptance of the idea of video conferencing. So yeah, so just to rewind, yeah, we picked it because we're based here, but actually like since all the COVID stuff's happened, you know, I think we've had 6 people and those are people that realistically aren't from this area, you know, like, you know, we're talking London, Edinburgh, Greece, yeah, two reasonably local. So even if we open the office, not even if we open it, we will, like, but those people won't be there as such. So yeah, we bought this great building. Will we use it as much as we probably should do moving forward? That's probably changed, because without COVID, we would hide in a catchment area like this, but like our catchment area now is huge for employing people. So we're employing people outside the area, which is not ideal. Like we, you know, we're local lads, we're a family-run business. We want to hire in the area, absolutely, but you know, just a byproduct of COVID. So yeah, just to kind of go back to the point, yeah, we have a premise in Preston, but in reality, like probably like in the future, a lot of our workforce will never see it. Maybe.
Can I just jump on a point that you made there about the local area and stuff? Because you know, obviously we find that a lot of the youngsters that come out through the education, that they want to leave Preston, they want to go to the big lights and the big cities and all those kind of stuff to better pay and all that type. We need to get that back in Preston so that local people who are educated here and live here want to work in our companies here that are based in Preston.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, it's one of my bugbears. Like, at the end of the year show at the UConn and stuff, you always speak to the students like, I need to go to London or Manchester to work on like the Disney account.
Yeah.
Or, you know, but there's fantastic agencies in the northwest of England, Lancashire, that are working with these big brands that could offer actually more close to the metal. Like, you know, like say if someone went to work for Andy from Wash, like one of the best creatives in the northwest, you know, and imagine being able to work 2 meters from him and hear him and be part of that. Whereas if you go and work for, you know, a McCann or Sartre or whoever, like place I used to work at, you're so far removed from that as a youngster. I think a part of that is to kind of like to resolve that. I always feel is kind of, most companies in Preston that have a big team of student liaison members of staff that connect with. So I think a part of that is a lot of academia and us as Digital Lancashire maybe and individuals approaching academia going, let's have the opportunity to present some of the interesting stuff these companies are doing, so the people in academia can see a road towards staying in Lancashire. So there's a huge benefit of Lancashire. I mean, at the minute, like it feels like most of the people that are kind of are super skilled and talented tend to go away and then they come back to build the family. You know, like in the Ribble Valley, which is lovely, or you know, various parts of Lancashire which are quite attractive. So, but yeah, it'd be great if you know, academia or people in education were aligned with that and also a digital industry to kind of show some interesting stuff that these local companies are doing. And Digital Lancashire represents quite a lot of like very unique businesses, all the way from kind of really kind of creative all the way down to kind of really niche data science and program applications and AI, things that are going to destroy the world.
Yeah, and as I said at the beginning, you know, we are committed to making sure that our curriculum has to support the people, like support the businesses in Preston. So in terms of education and industry coming together, it's really important that we get that employer input into our curriculums, that we liaise with employer businesses in the local area, and that they actually help us to shape what the skills are needed in the Preston area so that we can feed Preston with the skills that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were saying before, we've got bricks and mortar we'd like to hire in Lancashire, but we kind of the tier of clients that we operate on, it's difficult to get that experience. Like say, if there's a brain drain out of Lancashire because people don't see any flagpole agencies or work that's being done that's interesting to them, then that will occur. And I do feel that even at tutor level, which is where most of the students probably get their influence from, they do pitch like going to work in places like London and stuff to cut your teeth.
Yeah.
Can I just add that point about the it's been mentioned, I think, pretty much every cluster discussion we've had around the talent drain, it's definitely a thing people do go. They're lured by the bright lights, sound, smells of wherever that is, Leeds, Manchester, and you've pointed out there, Adam, about there tends to be a proclivity where people will go and get whatever that is out of their system, come back to Lancashire. And I think that reflects in the research we did recently, where Lancashire's digital community has, compared to the rest of the country, an exceptionally older digital workforce. 40% of it is over 50. And the 25 upwards is more so. And I wonder if that is, a lot of the talk is always how do we stop the drain? And I think it's important, but I wonder if at some point there's thoughts from the other side around how do we capitalize on that, actually, the proposition around bugger off but come back. I'm not saying we should do that, but it's worth a discussion around, which I know is not great for Preston's College. I'm not saying we should ship
no, that's fine.
Just to add something to that, maybe it's not necessarily like actually going and working for a company. Maybe they need to work on, like, you know, as startups as well, like, you know, start like having entrepreneurial spirit, and you know that needs to be nurtured as well.
And that's going to be interesting coming up in a time where there's a lot of people that are unemployed right now. It usually creates a boom in startups and entrepreneurs coming. So, like I say, it's be interesting to see how that could be harnessed. That maybe they, you know, to really sell this arena to people who want to start their businesses, you know. But I suppose is the client base there? Is it, you know? But like I say, the world has changed. It doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't matter where you are. You know, people are working, you know, nationally and globally from lots of different pockets through the country. But it's interesting, sort of, when you put. But I was just reading what Duncan's question around sort of the perception of, you know, the profile of Digital Lancashire, sort of being, is it, you know, the question for Preston, is it cemented enough, is it high enough, and so on. But I think that's probably the challenge coming forward in like kind of this arena where there isn't events which naturally bring people together, being able to kind of present what it is and sort of who Digital Lancashire is and what you want to achieve, how to do that, and kind of position yourself to be able to help people with what they need, you know, because it's going to be very, very varied coming up. And maybe I can say that maybe people don't fully understand how they can use the resource. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think just developing on that front, Kat, I think it's a really good point. And something else Duncan had mentioned in the side there is, so as well as the profile and the strength of Digital Lancashire's profile in Preston and beyond, and obviously I think that does need to be bolstered and improved. There's then, I suppose, the further thing which Duncan's mentioned there is we were under close scrutiny from Lancashire County Council because we have an SLA with them. So a lot of the work we do with them is benchmarked, and that's like to be more and more scrutinised. So Duncan's thing around how do we work with everyone in the room here? How do we demonstrate progress and impact with the work we do with the cluster?
And I guess that's more difficult now with not being able to kind of run events and getting people in the room together as well.
Yeah, it's probably, yeah. I mean, it's easier to get faces in a room together, isn't it? To have a discussion like this, I suppose, on the flip side of that. Apart from when we're having massive announcements about tier 3, obviously, but there is that sort of breaking down of barriers. Again, as you were saying, Adam, about bringing talent back to the area to work for the area, but not necessarily be in the area. But I think you're right about that collaboration with education is vital. Connecting Digital Lancashire, through Digital Lancashire for the likes of SOAP, Blue Wren, and all the other agencies with Preston College and UCLan is vital. You know, if we do want to give back to Lancashire County Council and to keep Preston thriving, I think that's going to be vital to sort of improving the value that people get out of Digital Lancashire.
Do you think there's something around like kind of the concept of create, I have to kind of phrase this probably, it's like if a cluster is formed and it has a vibe to it and a life to it, and it's kind of cool and it has its sort of sex appeal to it, that it kind of creates its own momentum of the idea of, like, if people feel that there's a digital hub, it will attract digital investment and people who want to be part of that world. And like how can that kind of it's sort of that outward communication and messaging and something cohesive, and that it's like that this is a thing, you know. We kind of talk about that there's clusters in Lancashire. How can we kind of wrap that up into something that's actually has a kind of a real sort of feel to it that people automatically want to be involved in?
Culture that people aspire to be part of. It's very valid. I mean, I think that's the goal with like Digital Lancashire, and certainly the Preston cluster is to, and the reason for this is to try and get people engaged and together and contributing as a voice, thoughts and opinions, so that we can kind of cement that and have something that kind of addresses those points and provides a kind of thing that people can point at to go to solve or kind of point in the right direction. So that can go from training, skills, academia, employment opportunity, funding, all that sort of stuff. And I feel that probably the key to that is really just as a city and people, that everyone that's connected with the city coming together and on Slack or other channels to start being more proactive, which is easy to say, just do it. But fundamentally, like you say, it's almost culturally, we want people to see the value that we're delivering and aspire to be part of that and see the difference that we make. And that is kind of one of the reason d'etres of DigiLanks, and specifically the Preston cluster, is to try and get people together to.
But what can people do? So you've got, you've got Joe Blogg's web designer, the team of 2. What can he do to make a difference? I think that's, for people to understand how they can do something to help you achieve the goals that you want to achieve and help themselves and everybody else as well. What kind of tangible ideas can we give people? I'm around lots of businesses here. What can I, what do you guys think that I can say to people? What can you do? What can people actually do? Because lots of people want to do stuff, they just don't know what to do.
Yeah, and I think you made a valid point at the start of the call as well. It's kind of like, it's almost, sometimes people feel they need to be asked specifically as individuals, like, can you do this? Yes, then great, be a part of it. I think a lot of it, and hopefully Tom will kind of jump in here a little bit with more specifics, but it is kind of just being part of the community and talking, and then from that, the issues and problems that arise from that, we can put back to the community and connect the dots with that. So specifically how that might look, like things like briefs, tenders, funding, people having those sort of issues, then if they came to us as Digital Lancs or DigiLanks Preston specifically, we can connect them with the right sort of people. So that's like kind of one example, but fundamentally having a community to kind of live in a certain area is a key part, it be Slack or the website or other.
Yeah, so agree with that, and just to build on that and to come back to your question, Kat. So for me, it's a multifaceted thing. A number of really sort of quick wins. So what can people do to help? The first is really, like Adam said, is to engage with Digital Lancashire. And what I mean by that is we often put surveys out. We want to garner we want to get a pulse check. We want to see what the state of what XYZ is, whether that's Preston or the state of. So it's making sure that that Preston businesses contribute in that way. So then we have assets and a story to tell. We have proof, so that if we are looking to, source extra funding, find that support, try and join the dots together, we've got a story to tell by people's stories. Interesting. My second note I made here is. It's having those stories. There's always there are ambassadors and champions are on people's lips, and I think when we all start telling the same story, when we all start to understand. So I know if we were to all think of Lancashire Preston champions, who are the people that come to mind? For me, it's Cat at Society One. It's Soap. It's 3 Man Factory. It's ECAM. It's UCLan. It's Kerry Harrison with LESP. It's 4 Points. It's Wash. It's there's a number of people, and having those collective stories and success stories, because a lot of the discussion in other clusters, it's how we communicate Lancashire outside of Lancashire. We're talking about very important insular things that affect Preston, but when we are looking to shine a light on Lancashire, we want to go and champion everyone. So, for example, there's a company called Videos, VIDDYOZE. Don't know if anyone's heard of them.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
So they're Preston. They're based in Bamber Bridge. They are turning over tens of millions of pounds. They are growing exponentially. They're about to. In fact, I don't think I can share the next bit of information that Joey told me the other day. Big things are happening. They're based in Bamber Bridge. They have a SaaS service where you can create, in essence, really slick looking videos for a fraction, like dollars, rather than bringing in a team. So they're an incredible company. They've got an amazing office in Bamber Bridge that was fit out by this fairly high, a really cool interior designer architect. And who knows? And the fact that it was only through a prolific North story, actually. I caught with them last year. I was like, hang on, they're 2 miles down the road from where I live. So I think it's being able to champion those incredible people and organisations, to each other and outside of. But so coming back to what can we do to help? So the more we at Digital Lancashire know about you and the businesses in the area, the more we can share and we can amplify. and we can brag and that we can show off. So we have a point in case when we talk about Lancashire being a place of excellence for digital and tech, then we want the proof, because we know it exists. We just need to find it. We will find more of it.
So Tom, just to pose a question to you. So people that are watching this video conference, webinar, insert the correct word here, how can they get involved? What's the steps that they can do to kind of be part of this and yeah, help promote themselves and connect the dots?
Okay, without being overtly salesman about this, we are a membership organisation. So we depend very much on our members to participate. So for example, we do lots more outside of the website, but as one of the, a fraction of what being a member enables you to do is once you join, you can share your news stories. We will amplify those on our site, on our social channels. You can, we post tender and collaboration opportunities. When we spot potential funding, we will share that as quick as we can with you. You can post jobs on, there's all kinds of things you can do there for collaboration, for betterment of things. And there's a whole bigger membership proposition, but but other than being a member, it's attending events like this. It's being the voice of the particular area or a cluster or a specialism. And like I say, for us, a key thing is in engagement. We had a discussion this morning for Blackpool, where there's incredible things happening there. You've got the DWP happening there. You've got a great big cable coming in from the sea now, feeding internet in from the US, which is going to transform Blackpool's sort of digital infrastructure. There's all kinds of things there. But the digital community, or rather lots of digital things happening, not much of a digital community. And the same when we discussed Blackburn last night, it was very, very similar. A plethora of digital businesses, but who weren't really talking. So we encourage everyone to, if you're thinking, well, I don't remember yet, prove it. We're open to email us, talk to us, ring us, because one thing we are particularly good at is joining dots, introducing people. A lot of our successes and a lot of the kick we get from doing what we do is when we spot someone who we think should meet this other person, join the dots, and then months down the line, a great project has kicked off, or there's been an impact. So by facilitating that introduction, it's vital, but that only happens. We would love to be able to reach out and not identify everyone, but sometimes we need you to come to us and just ask the question, like, who are you? How can you help me?
It would be great to see more of, I don't know, we do cover like some of those stories, but telling those stories of examples of how somebody has been helped, and then if they identify with that they could have get the same opportunities and help. That might be a good way to get people involved into the community. It's that kind of, sometimes people can't see the exact sort of examples. If they can see it in how things have worked in real life, sometimes helps people get over that initial sort of hurdle, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah. I guess just to extend from that question, is there anything from the panelists and on the chat for the wider room that they feel that Digital Lancs can help them with, or connect the dots, or anything that as an entity that we can do better or support better? Silence.
I'm talking a lot.
I was just going to say, I'm assuming that the silence means we're getting everything bang on, spot on.
Yeah.
Well, I think people can always be more visible. I think as Digital Lancashire, we can certainly be a lot more visible and sort of help and sort of to tell people more about what Digital Lancashire is there to do. As at Blue Wren, I perhaps didn't know a huge amount when I joined Blue Wren, and I perhaps didn't know that much for the first couple of years being at Blue Wren either. And it was only through sort of putting myself out there, if you like, that you get to know it. And I think to perhaps be something more to show even opportunities, career pathways for people that are starting out their digital career with other agencies, but to understand, what other organisations are around. I think there's a lot more we can do to shout about Digital Lancashire. And I think, I know I mentioned it already, but that collaboration with education, I think, is key. Yeah, I think that is something that is really doesn't seem to be visible enough.
No.
I think it's something we can do a lot more with.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think yeah, we could work together a lot better in showing and showcasing what those career pathways are and what those opportunities are in the area, and actually just having some visibility from digital employers within the college in numerous different vises, but just actually coming in and talking to our learners and showcasing what Digital Lancashire looks like.
I think one thing from my point of view, I think it's something that I know you've done a lot of work on already as well, is people understanding, the idea of what is a digital business, and that actually, there's so many businesses that don't probably class themselves as digital businesses. I talk about Society One, we're not a digital business, but we have loads of digital elements, so everything you do helps us as well. And there's a lot of things that are of interest to us, but we don't do digital design work and so on. But I understand that there's still sort of benefits to the relationship and the community for us. So I think sometimes people need to understand that that there's a lot of gains to be had to be part of that community for their business, even though they might not be in what people define a digital business in so many different ways. But I think it's like, I wonder whether there's some people that don't really realise that actually it's really valid to them.
It's a really relevant and good point made, Kat. It's one of the biggest challenges. In fact, it's one of the I've got so many notes from the last few days, but good notes. But one of the recurring things is, what is digital, or a definition of digital, and it's certainly one of the takeaways from the reboot is that perhaps we're going to explore and investigate and lead a conversation, lead the research, and because the government, there is no defined. We ran a session with the Lancashire Forum Creative with Rory and his team last year. Was it this? I lose track of time. Recently. And around defining digital. And as part of that, we looked at how the government defined digital, how there isn't really a good unified understanding of digital now. There is our manifesto, which does have how we treat and how we define digital. But it's definitely a really important point. And like you say, as to the challenge of whether people identify as a digital person, organisation or business is an interesting one. With the research we did recently, trying to map the digital landscape in the region. And bear with me because there's a lot of numbers. I'm going to have to throw some numbers at you. It gets confusing. But in Lancashire, if we think about the Lancashire businesses who are digital, there's nearly 3,000 of them. Most of those are micro businesses, so up to 95% of those are 9 employees or under. So it's primarily smaller teams. Now, when we consider the workforce, there are over 32,000 people working in digital. However, only 7,000 of those are people in a digital role in a digital company. Okay. When we consider the people who are in digital roles in non-digital companies, well, that's 14,000. That's double the amount of people who are working in digital but don't actually work in companies. And then there are people who are in non-digital roles in digital companies. So it's 11,000 people. So it's a really complex makeup. So it's no wonder why we've got this great big challenge that trying to, like you say, Kat, is working out how people, where they hang their hat. Like, am I digital? Well, I use a MacBook. I use this platform. Does that make me digital? So I completely agree that there's perhaps a piece to be done there around how do you qualify yourself as, because often people will disqualify them. They'll look at Digital Lancashire and they'll think, not for me.
And people are scared of it sometimes as well, because you say the word digital to some people and it's automatic things, programmers, tech geeks, that's not me, and it's going to be too much, it'll be over my head, I won't understand it, and people kind of get instantly kind of scared at the idea when it's not about that. And there is plenty of tech geeks and has a place in AI, and you start talking about AI and everyone goes, that's weird, I don't get it. But it's like, you know, to be accessible, I suppose. How to kind of communicate that. I don't envy you. It's easy to say these things, but
and I don't know if anyone's watched Duncan's just put in the it's briefly how we consider the word digital, or how we approach the word digital in our organisation. So I'm not going to read it out verbatim, but do have a look at the manifesto, because it's a fascinating part of the challenge that we have is in how people qualify themselves, or how we qualify them to being part of the ecosystem that we can support and help.
Well put. Thank you, Tom. I guess, like, approaching kind of last 5 minutes or so. Is there anything anyone would like to kind of put to the table? Any questions? Anything that people would like to voice? Anything that's irritating people? We're here for group therapy, so let's do it. No? Cool. I guess in that case, if we're happy to, can wrap up, and I just want to thank everyone for the time, and everyone on chat that's coming, that's dialed in to watch and tune in, and tune in. God, that's old school. Yeah, just what we're trying to do fundamentally is bring people together. It's more difficult now in a digital space rather than face to face. But the work that we want to do, we're generally passionate and care about, like, the area and digital as a whole, but specifically Preston. So by all means, join the Slack, join the website, contribute, have stories to tell, get in touch. If you need help, get in touch. You know, we're here to support the digital community. So if there's anything that people want to ask or be part of, then by all means just reach out, and we're always here for you. So just like to thank everyone for the time. Sean, Kat, Lindsay, Tom as well, remember you this time, Joe and Duncan as well. Yeah, so I appreciate that, guys, and yeah, have a good Friday.
Can I say one thing that I think there is a momentum building for sure, and there is actually so much more coming out from Digital Lancashire that's really strong and coherent, and I think it's really coming together. It's great what they're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Brilliant. All right, guys.
Thank you. Cheers.